having me here. I paid the person who took that picture of me a lot of money. It's so beautiful. I aspire to look like that every day. So I'm here. I've called this session I've talked about being the token woman and about how we can develop some strategies, a toolkit to do it. I am extremely well placed to talk about this. And it's because I have been the token in so many different ways for nigh on 40, possibly a little longer, but around 40 years. I get calls all the time to come and be on panels, to come and talk at conferences. Very often I'm not in when the calls come in, so they end up on my answer phone. And typically they sound like this. Oh, hello. I was hoping to speak to Femi Otitoju, because they can't say my name. And then they go, yes, Femi. Yes, we were wondering if she could be on our panel. If you could get back to us, that would be great. Thank you. We do hope she can make it. Thank you. Now, I know the conversation that has happened before that phone call was made. Someone has gone, who are we putting on that important panel? And somebody else has said, well, I don't know who it should be, but I think it's very important that we have a woman on the panel. And somebody else realises that this is the equality and diversity and inclusion gauntlet being thrown down, and they go, yes, a woman, absolutely. You can't disagree, can you? Yes, a woman, absolutely, very important. And then people go, oh, we're doing diversity, right. OK, yes, I think a woman's important, but I also think we need representation from the black and minority ethnic communities on the panel. Everyone go, black woman, yes, black woman, that'll be a challenge, never mind. And then how far do you go? I mean, maybe you need a disabled person. And what about a lesbian or a gay man? Or do you need one of each, or will just one do? And so the panel gets bigger and bigger. And eventually someone goes, what about that Femi? Isn't she like 4 of those in one? And I'm really good value for money. And so everybody wants me on their panel. And some people say, that's just tokenism. So that's what I want to explore, about what we feel about being the token women on these things, how we fulfill it. Many of you will have been the token woman, the only one in the C-suite, the only one at senior management level, the only one in the tech department or something else. And if you've been the token woman, then I think it's important that we help the other women recognise that if you're a token anything, anywhere, you've got 2 jobs. So I'm going to explore this with you, what the job is and how we do it. But first, let's outline who you are responsible to when you are the token woman. You are responsible to, obviously, the person who is your line manager in the hierarchy. Of course we are. That's clear. That's written on the piece of paper you got sent when you took up the job. But also lurking somewhere, in the big companies at least, is someone called the Board Diversity Champion. And they are very keen that the diversity agenda should be, forwarded and advanced as much as possible. So they're very keen that that token woman should do well. They'll be watching you. And then there may be someone whose job it is to further the diversity initiatives in the company. And they too will be very keen that the token woman should do well. So they'll be watching you as well, as will all the other ambitious women in the company who are hoping that one day they'll get to be where you are, provided you don't mess it up for them. And then there's not just the women in your company, there's the women in the rest of the industry, and of course the young women who are hoping to get into the industry, and their mums and their dads and everybody else who wants women to do better. They all depend on those of us that are the tokens to do well. So that's a lot of people that we answer to. Let's have a look at the role itself. Now remember, you have one piece of paper that tells you about your job. It tells you about what you must achieve and how you must develop this area and provide a smooth service to that. But then, as the token person, you have this whole other job description, and it's so long that it needs 2 slides. So, first of all, you must be nice. You must be grateful and you must be nice, because you mustn't be that bitch. Otherwise, they won't like you. and then they'll make it harder for you. And then, you see, when we are the only woman, and if you're in my unconscious bias workshop this morning, you'll know when I say you become a mammoth to other people. The only woman in the C-suite is often a very scary thing. And if you make me feel uncomfortable, I won't like you. And if I don't like you, I won't support you. So, as token woman, be nice, be good, recognize who you might make feel uncomfortable, and help them cope. Right? Don't be too aggressive, too confrontational. Oh, and by the way, it is quite important that as an organisation committed to diversity and inclusion, we have a woman at the forefront of our initiatives. So you will be required to turn up in all these different fora. You must be on the committees, on the panels, you must be our representative at that conference. Oh, and we're doing the new annual report. We of course need you on the cover of that as our token woman. So, yeah, a little bit of makeup would be great. Thank you. Oh, and there's another young woman just starting over there in that team. I wonder, could you mentor her? Perhaps between the conference and the photo shoot, you could go and mentor her. Oh, and there's a new paper on the role of women at work. If you could cast your eye over that too, after you've seen the young woman who needs supporting, and after the photo shoot, of course. So you're an expert on all things gender, and yeah, also understand that because you are the only woman, that doesn't mean that we want you to bring too many feminine things here. I mean, we are still the old boys club, aren't we? I said it needed 2 slides, okay? Do look good, please. Don't lose your femininity. We don't want any imitation men here, but don't be too, you know, we don't want you to be a distraction. You have to recognise the way other people's unconscious bias might affect you. You might need to challenge it, but you mustn't do it too aggressively. Oh, and when we're in a meeting and someone needs to take the notes, book the room, order the coffee, or something else that comes under the heading of office housework, all of those end up on your plate too. They're all part of the unwritten job description of the token woman. Do you feel tired yet? Okay, so what do we do with that? Well, first of all, let's understand how much recognition we get for this unwritten role. It doesn't turn up at your appraisal. It's not allowed for in your performance development plan or whatever they call it. And it certainly, rarely turns up in the remuneration. You don't get a pay rise for it. Nonetheless, it's very important that you're good at it. Now, most of us recognise that lots of women have lots of obstacles outside of work. I always said, and I was very, very clear, that when I decided I would start my own business and go independent, I live with another woman, and neither one of us wanted to be the wife. This was an issue. So all those things you see there, the washing, the ironing, the cooking, the cleaning, whatever, we were like, we need to get another one because we need someone else to do that job. But the outside work is only part of it. There's also a lot of obstacles that we as women face when we are the tokens. So the other half of what I want to say to you is about how we tackle those other things. Right, what happens? Some of us are super sensitive. We get an invitation, someone says, could you come and be on this thing? And we look at the list of the rest of the speakers and we realise we're the only woman. Or we get offered a job and we Google the rest of the people at that level and we realise we're the only woman. And for me, I also realise I'm the only black person or other things as well. And many women that I meet in that position will say, well, you know, I resent that. I don't want to be the token. I want to get the job on my own merit. I don't want to be there because I'm the only woman. I worked so hard. I worked for the BBC, just doing some consultancy work. I managed to persuade the head of television to agree that there should be no more male-only panels in the comedy shows. I got him to say that. And I got him to write it down and send it out to all the people who were programming at the BBC. I was so pleased with myself, right? Then, when I started telling women comedians about it, they were like, oh, well, you know, I don't want to be a token woman on a comedy panel, no. I'm like, What? Do you know how hard I worked to make that happen? Do you know how many times you have not got on the panel because you are a woman? If someone offers you the opportunity to be a token, put both your hands out, grab that thing, and be it. And be amazing. And then the next time you're there, you'll be there because of your achievements. I am very clear that I have had some opportunities where people go, oh, she's the friendly face of feminism. She doesn't frighten us. She's a nice, cuddly black person. I know I'm there because of that. But I know that when I get invited back the following year, it's because I'm brilliant. So I think we should do that. Grab it, be amazing. The other things are, of course, is if you do notice you're the token, you could go, I see you've invited me to be on that panel. That's lovely, thank you. I see also that I'm the only woman, and I do know this other amazing woman. I wonder if I might bring her with me. Let's do that, hey? And if you absolutely can't get your head around that, then by all means, turn it down and tell them why. And maybe next time, they'll invite another woman. Survival tip 1. I've got half a dozen for you. The reason why I say it's important to grab those tokenistic opportunities is the chances are, if you haven't already missed something because you are a woman, you will be held to a higher standard than a lot of the men who are in the same position as you anyway. So if you've got a little tiny leg up, don't worry about it. Almost every sector has a gender pay gap. You know that, right? In most fields, this is one I was working in last week, so I brought it. In most fields, women are held to higher standards than men. So if you get one little opportunity because of your being a token woman, just go for it. Here's number 2. We all know about imposter syndrome. Okay, don't try and get rid of it necessarily, just know you're in good company. Do you know these two? Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook and Lupita Nyong'o, who of course won her Oscar for 12 Years a Slave. They still, I mean, how much better do you need to be at the top of what you do? They still have imposter syndrome. And it's partly, I think, some people get it because they focus on what other people are doing and they worry about whether they're as good as everybody else. And I say, don't read about everybody else. Don't Google them all and see what they're up to. No, just spend that time and that creativity on what you are good at. Acknowledge your strengths. Now, this is interesting because you just heard brag a lot. And I'm going to say, but don't oversell. So if you know, I think you kind of balance those two things out. If you know you're prey to imposter syndrome and then you've bragged a lot, you might be worried about whether you can perform. If, like some of us, you've developed an immunity to imposter syndrome, brag away. Off you go. Okay. Here's number 3. Have you heard this concept, stereotype threat? Stereotype threat is what happens when there is a known and common stereotype about us, about what you are, like in this case a woman. And if you're not aware of it, it can affect your performance. You might not even realise it's happening. I'm going to use an ordinary, non-work example of this. I just bought myself a new car. It's really nice. It's a 4.5 litre BMW. Big car. I mean business. It's the 3rd BMW of that size that I've had, and I keep them on average 7 years. This is pertinent. So now you know that I have been driving this size BMW for 21 years. I can park those cars. Yeah, I can park those cars with one hand and on the phone. But the day I have to parallel park between 2 cars when there are 4 men standing on the street corner doing this, how well will I park that car? That will be the day that I mess up parking the car. You get that, don't you? And you know why. Because somehow, and I wouldn't even necessarily realise that's what's going on, except, of course, now I do, because I understand about stereotype threat. That's the theory. That was what I just told you was the practice. What works for me? Well, I learned later to do this from my little sister, who had the same sort of experience. And I said to her this. I said, take a good look at those men. That one with the builder's bottom. Do you have that expression? You know, when their trousers are solar? That one there with the builder's bottom. Look at that one over there. I don't even know what he's doing. Really? Do you think all those guys are better than you? Because they can park their cars. My sister was like, nope. The car went in like that. Remind yourself what you can do. Don't focus on other people too much. Acknowledge that other things might affect your performance, like I'm distracted because I'm on the phone as well as parking. If you minimize the stereotype threat, you will perform better and it'll go away. So think about situations where the stereotype might be true for you. Is it about presenting difficult concepts, technical data, financial stuff? Then you put in your strategies to tackle stereotype threat. Okay, here's a few more. This is hard. But one of the things that we need to deal with is the way we are as women, and particularly those of us that are young women, not myself anymore, sadly, is often not valued in the workplace. And so we need to decide which of these are so much about us, so much a part of our identity, that we will not compromise, and which ones we're prepared to let go. I did that. I don't know if you do that, but it's a thing that young women are doing a lot these days. Any of us got the vocal fry? I found it started sneaking into my talk as well. But apparently, socially, it's not accepted in business. We need to think about that, because if that's what we do, if that's our norm these days, we can be disregarded. And while I'm at the way we speak, what about uptalk? I'd like to be part of that control panel. Why are you doing that? That kind of uptalk, people will often see it as a lack of confidence and a lack of ability to hold a room. Words like and I mean, sort of like, those little verbal phrases, or even just our habits of playing with our hair when we talk. All of these things can end up being distractions if we are the token woman. If there's loads of us, we barely even notice it. But we need to be aware, and then we need to decide whether we're prepared to change. Here's my penultimate tip. Little tiny things people will do that will make us feel that we don't belong as women. They will swap our names for words like darling, doll, sweetheart, and dear. They will call us a good girl when we do good work, even though we haven't been a girl for 20 years. They will imply that we did well when we only did what everybody else is doing, because they were surprised that a woman could do it. If you've been a token woman, you've had all of these things. How do we survive this kind of behaviour? Well, I say don't let it pass. Just really don't let it pass, because they can get into the habit. And if they get into a big habit of doing it, and they do it regularly, and we let it go too often, it gets harder for us to challenge. So I say challenge early. Challenge often, so they get used to hearing it. But challenge gently. I prefer it if you call me Femi. Just thought I'd mention that bit. I just thought I'd mention that. Works really well. Not okay, because if you ask them to answer you, it's like saying, do you want to fight? And it's confrontational. So I just thought I'd tell you that and move on. And then I think ignore where there's a hidden message. I always say other people can drop hints at you, but we don't have to pick them up. So if there's sarcasm or underlying digs at us, we can ignore them. And finally, find yourself an ally. We really need people who will work with us to help us fulfill our role as tokens. And give our allies permission to support us. Because if they're on side, particularly if they're male, they'll often wonder whether they should leap in and rescue us or not in given situations. So find out who your allies are, tell them about the situations you might find difficult, give them permission to support you. Because otherwise, those things mount up. And you know these little messages, they're like mosquito bites. One doesn't bother you, 2 or 3 irritates you, half a dozen in the space of 1 week, and you are unbearable. We should try and fix that. And here's number 6. Factor in ways to handle unconscious bias. I want to tell you the story of Martin and Nicole. You might have read about them. Martin and Nicole, well, Nicole was saying that the people, she worked in executive search, she said the people that were applying for roles with her were difficult. They didn't seem to listen to her. They didn't take her recommendations about how to improve their resumes. She went on leave. She wasn't doing as well as Martin. Martin looked after her inbox while she was away, and he agreed. Her people were particularly difficult. He said, you have difficult people. She said, welcome to Working Well Female. He said, no, it can't be that. She said, yeah, it is. So they swapped inboxes. She had the best week of her working life. He was in total misery. Why? Because as soon as they saw a female name, this is other people's unconscious bias, as soon as they saw a female name on the bottom of the email signature, people started questioning and pushing back. And yeah, it was more difficult for her. So we need to understand that and find ways of minimizing it. And mostly it's about compensating for other people's bias. You're biased because I'm female, I will list the things I've achieved. You've got preconceived ideas about me, I will tell you the ways in which I'm different from what you're expecting. We have to find ways of doing that. Let me finish with this. The big thing that really has helped me in all the ways in which I was a token was getting the support of other women. The networks, the coaches, and the support groups internally. Because if I've got someone else to talk to about this sort of thing, then together I can check things out instead of just going, it's just me, is it me? I can work things out with them. The number of times that people have given me a wonderful one-liner to use after the event. You know, something's happened to you, you think, oh, you tell someone, they say, oh, you should have said this. And I think, why didn't I know that at the time? But now that I have networks and coaches and supporters, I tell them the situation first, they give me the one-liners. Life is much better. So I can check things out, I can work things out, and with my allies and my supporters, I can sort things out. So when all of us as tokens get together, we can cash ourselves in, and we can make a lot of money and buy big cars. Thank you.
Wow, Femi, thank you. Wow.